has never shown any imperial interest in Africa. China was there with us. In our liberation struggles, China supported us. When the West was colonizing us, China was helping to liberate us. China was there to...
So I'm going to stop this video. I don't know who this man is exactly, but it's one of these videos you find going around, floating around TikTok. Basically, this
defend
man
our
here,
independence.
Right, this man here in white shirt is the bald man that we're listening to. Seems to be some kind of a political type of guy, and he's basically says I guess the point he's trying to make is that China has been an ally all along. Okay, and I'm gonna have you listen to him, and I'll make some commentary because I'm obsessed with exposing the pathology of African leaders, okay? And it will shed some light on the reason why Africa is where it is, why people keep leaving Africa, there's brain drain, the people that live on the continent. I'll say about 2% of those people are living at the standard of living of people in the West. So everybody else is poor. So it's all levels of poverty going on in their countries. Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, and the likes. I did a video earlier where West Africans in Tunisia were causing so much chaos that they're being kicked out to go back to their countries of Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Togo, Senegal, right? These guys claim they're escaping poverty and persecution. But it's a lie, because they don't escape poverty from Senegal to Nigeria. You know, they don't run from Nigeria to Ivory Coast, right? They don't run from Ivory Coast to Togo. They always, and which are all black countries, they always run to countries where the people are pale skinned. And now they're doing it to the pale skinned people in Africa, right? So Northern Africa has Moroccans, Algeria, Egypt. These are paler skinned Africans, and the darker skinned Africans basically encroaching into their environments. And then when the people there kick back, then the black Africans call them racist. So this is something that's becoming a big trend. It happened in Ukraine when Ukraine was getting into this war. The black African students or what have you, immigrants that are there, started complaining about racism, right? When the country that you're in is getting bombarded and women and children are getting killed, you don't want to fight as an able-bodied man. You don't want to fight with the Ukrainian soldiers. You want to get on a bus with the women and children. And the Ukrainians were saying, no, women and children first. And oh, by the way, our families first, which makes sense, okay? If the colors were flipped and it was Ukrainian migrants in some African country and there was a civil strife, I'm sure the Africans would want their family members to board the buses first, okay? This is not racism. This is just human beings behaving as social animals. This is how we roll, okay? All right, so let's listen to this old African man. He looks like a politician, and my mission this year is to expose old African men, old black African men in power, politicians, corrupt individuals, lazy individuals. They'd have no foresight. They come and oppress the people and just cause a ripple effect that destroys lives. Let's listen to this guy, and I'll give you my commentary.
Economically and otherwise. For instance, my country, Zambia, it was blockaded. All our neighboring country were still under colonialism. We had no access to the ports from Mozambique, from South Africa, from Namibia, from Angola. But there was no proper road, there was no rail. We asked the Americans, the British, to help us put up a rail system to the port of Dar es Salaam. They refused. President Nyerere of Tanzania came on behalf of Zambia and Tanzania.
All right. So he just said that the Americans and the British refused to help them build a railway track, but the British and the Americans refused. I mean, we can take his word for it, or we can say show proof. What exactly were the discussions? Okay, did you guys negotiate properly, or did you make a bad deal that the British and the Americans simply did not want to be part of, right? Did they make a deal that the British and the Americans simply did not want to be a part of? And we see this a lot. This is very common. The African leaders, they like luxurious items, right? So they want magical projects to be completed for them. It's like you send, the people over there need aid, and you send them, basic food items for sustenance, yet they want filet mignon. You know what I'm saying? So that could probably be one of the reasons, and it's very common. Fuck. It happens all the time. Okay. So that's possibly one of the things that happened. Okay. That's why they didn't get what they wanted. That's number one. Number two, China coming to build something for you, that means that they want your minerals. They build it for free, but they're taking your minerals, right? And this guy's not going to be honest and say that. And just for the record, the country of Zambia is totally owned by China right now. They took so many loans. That's where he's from, this guy. They took so many loans from China. They're saying that their national anthem is now being sang in in Mandarin. Okay, their police headquarters is technically being run by they have Chinese nationals in their police force. If that ain't a takeover of your country, I don't know what is. All right. So this guy is lying. The problem, the mistake that a lot of these African political types, these old African men, these old black African men in power, they assume that everyone is stupid. So when you listen to them, the more you listen to them, the more you begin to pick apart what you're saying. Like, they contradict themselves, they lie, they make these statements that they think people don't understand. Like, they think people don't have higher intelligence to question what you're saying. And they just make these statements, and then they put in, oh, everybody hates us. We're black. It's because we're black. They don't like us because we're black, which is a lie. Okay, you guys, these black African politicians, old politician men, everybody's talking about old white men. So here we're going to talk about old black African men in politics, powerful African men. They always want to point at a phantom reason why they fail to do their job. Okay? All right, let's listen.
To ask the leadership of China under Chairman Mao, Zhou Enlai, for help to build a rail. China at that time did not have the capacity, but China said there's no way, they have to do it. They mobilized both the human capital, the materials that were needed, the finances that were needed. It was a very difficult task.
Okay, here we go. So Zambia went to China, and mind you, they were newly independent. So I kind of understand that they didn't have resources, but it still doesn't make sense. All the newly independent African countries had resources. They were actually better off at independence than they are now. If you ask any honest African who's well versed in politics and pays attention to the news and stuff like that, they'll tell you when the British left Nigeria, they left Nigeria with a surplus. Okay? Nigeria had a ton of money. When they left Ghana, Ghana had a surplus. When the French left Togo, they had a surplus of every resource you can imagine. So yes, the colonial powers were there. They were extracting resources. But when they left, those people, those at that particular time, those Africans there were living good. Okay, if they want to be honest, between the time the colonialists were there and now, Africa is in shambles. So here's this man going to China, which was also poor, right? So he's saying that we went to China, asked them to help us build railroads, and you heard him say China did not have the means. They themselves didn't have railroads. But guess the solution that China came up with? They mobilized the funding, the technology, the energy, the resources to create this, to work on this project. You see what I'm saying? So basically what this guy is saying is that that's all China had to do. They had to mobilize the resources, plan and mobilize the resources to complete the project. My question is, why can't him and his people do exactly that? Why can't the black African leaders, powerful African men in power, why couldn't they mobilize? Why couldn't they do some project management, mobilize all their people, all the resources they could in order to do that project themselves? Why do they always have to go be knocking on other people's door for help and be beggars? That's the question of the century. We have to straighten these people out. They have to stop being lazy and sit up and do work, because no one's going to save you. You have to work at yourself. Okay, let's listen.
China did not have that type of rail infrastructure in its own country.
You hear that?
But the Chinese people were ready to build that for us.
You see what I'm saying? China did not have that rail infrastructure in your own country, but the Chinese were ready to build that for us. You see the mentality of these old African men in power? They don't want to do anything for themselves. They want someone to do something for them. They always have a handout. They are beggars. They're lazy, because any person, a grown man who does not want to fend for himself is a child. You're a boy. You're lazy. You don't deserve to be a man. You should not be called a man. And you deserve no respect. But look at this guy here. Look at his face. Went to go beg the Chinese to come and build something for him. Ain't that shameful? And they sit here and want to call everybody racist. I bet you in a few years, when China decides to not give us to, give out loans to these countries and so on, he's going to be sitting here calling them racist, and yeah, they didn't like us all along, and everything they did for us was fake. They wanted to steal our resources. But look at his face. He's happy who went to go beg China, who didn't have the real resources, to come and build rail systems for his country, that China didn't even have those real resources. But China was somehow able to manage that project successfully. So you need to pay attention. These African leaders, they are completely useless. They are oppressing the people in Africa, and it's time the people woke up. Listen.
And in the process, China lost 70 of its own citizens, of its own.
So you hear that? China lost Chinese citizens while they were trying to build railways for this guy's country, even though China itself did not have the railways. So they're sacrificing human lives, Chinese human lives, in order to build a railway system for this guy's country. And they themselves, the Chinese people, don't even have the railway systems. See how human that is, how much of a philanthropic effort that is, how much of a kind gesture that is. Do you think this guy's country, Zambia, would go and build a project for China and lose 70 Zambian people? A project that they don't even have in their country. Do you think these guys will go do it for another country? They don't have what it takes. They don't have that level of effort, of kindness, okay? They don't have it, but they want everybody to be helping them out. Pay attention, okay? Pay attention.
People in the construction of that layer. The remains of those 70 Chinese people still lie in Zambia. We have 70 Chinese people buried in Zambia today. We have Chinese solidarity that will never be forgotten, that will last forever.
You see what I'm saying? So China loses 70 Chinese people in the process of building railway systems for Zambia. The Chinese themselves did not have the railway systems in their own country, but they came to help Zambia build it. Chinese did not have the know-how infrastructure, but they spent time, put together a team. Team came over and built a system. In the process, they lost 70 workers, died, and their bodies were never taken back to China. And this guy is sitting here with this face, proud of it, that the 70 souls that were lost in Zambia during the construction of that railway system creates a kind of solidarity between China and Zambia. What kind of bizarre thinking is this? You know, I'm sorry. Show some compassion for the dead men. You know, put some respect on your name, right? Show some compassion. These were people's family members. They died in your country in an effort to build railway road for you guys. But there's no mention of any kind of compassion for these people. He's rather proud that this has created a connection between him, their country, and China, which basically is a one-way flow of give me, give me, give me, give me, begging, begging, begging. Grown men, beggars, always begging somebody else for something. Look at them. If you don't help them, oh, you're a racist. Oh, yeah, you don't like us, blah, 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 blah. But they never build anything for themselves. And then they want respect.
At that time, China did not have a single mine in Africa. They did not have a single corporation operating in Africa. Not a single one. So it was selfless, noble assistance.
All right, let me pause this guy right there. There's no such thing as a selfless act. Okay? Everybody is in survival mode. Now, he said China didn't have one mine to dig and extract resources. China didn't have any organizations or factories or what have you in Africa when they built the railway for these guys. But, you know, this tells me how naive this individual is, because China was looking far into the future, right? They already know that you have resources that they're going to need and want. They're going to do you a favor because you're lazy. You can't build stuff for yourself. So they'll come and build stuff for you and then become your friend. And look how thankful he is. He's just so happy that Almighty God came from heaven and built him a railway. You see what I'm saying? So now he'll be very happy to trade off some resources to China, you know? And that's why the corruption happens. Is the laziness. We don't want to do anything for ourselves, and we're begging on the street for everybody. Somebody gives you $1, now they can take your little puppy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just this very weird way of being alive, where it's like, I'm never going to do anything for myself. I'm always going to be a beggar. Anybody that helps me can take anything I have. And the anything I have is the fact that folks are sitting on a ton of resources, mineral resources in Africa: gold, manganese, bauxite, diamonds, recently found oil, cobalt. What's the new thing that Tesla was looking for? So many resources. So it's nothing these guys have built or created. Nobody wants anything they have personally, because they've created nothing. The only thing they used to sell that they created, I guess, giving birth as creation, was human beings. The slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, these West African leaders, not this guy, because he wasn't alive then, but the same people, the chiefs, the kings, were selling human beings. Before that, they were selling human beings to the Arabs and spices, okay? So, but now they want to sit here and talk about how they're so innocent and everybody did them wrong. These are a group of bad hombres. They oppress the African people, the civilians. They treat them like chattel and cattle, and they do whatever they want to them. And then they brainwash them and misinform them and say, hey, it's the West that's oppressing you. It's not us. Meanwhile, it's them. 100,000%. Lazy, wasteful. They waste resources. They get loans and loans and loans from abroad and they waste it. Okay? Listen.
To fellow brothers and sisters, China has continued even now when it's doing well to cooperate with Africa. If you go to Africa today, you see a big hospital. 99.99% probabilities that it has been built by China.
You hear that? You hear that? 99.9 probability that any big hospital you see in Africa was built by China, which tells me that the Africans don't want to build a big hospital, or they don't know how to build a big hospital. And when I say they, I'm talking about the presidents, the governments of these African countries, all these 50 plus countries and their 50 plus heads of state and 50 plus presidents and their vice presidents. They don't build big hospitals for the Africans, but they can build big palaces to live in. Okay? They build big houses. They have big cars that they cruise around in. Okay? But they only a Chinese people will come and build a big hospital for the population and the civilians. You see how evil these guys are. They always want to say the West is oppressing them, but it's these African leaders, these black male African leaders in power who oppress the African people. No wonder the Africans are constantly leaving that continent. They leave. I mean, these guys make it so hellish, so difficult to be there that everybody wants to leave that continent, that part of the continent. And now they're going to Tunisia and causing problems there. And then Tunisians want them out, and now these people are crying racism. This is the strategy and the tactic, man. It's like somebody comes to your neighbor while you're, a classic story of this case is the story of the grasshopper and the ant. Okay, so the fable goes like this: it was summertime. The ant and his whole family were busy moving wood fire, and the grasshopper just wanted to sit in the sun. It's beautiful, and he was playing the violin. And the grasshopper said to the ant, "Hey, come to me. Let us play. What is going on? Why are you working so hard?" And the ant says, "Hey, winter's going to come soon. I have to work." The grasshopper was like, "Oh man, you don't know what you're doing. I'm over here having fun." And during the winter, when it got cold, the ant had firewood for him and his family, and the grasshopper came knocking on his door and said, "Hey friend, let me in." And the ant was like, "Hey, I have enough just for my family. And if I let you in here, we're also going to die from starvation, because then you're going to be eating our food and my family will starve. My obligation is to my family." That is how life is. You have to be working constantly. Okay, if your culture requires too much singing and dancing and time wasting, you have to cut that off. You have to get serious. But these guys, look at him. He is proud that China came to build hospitals for them and they build railroads for them. These guys don't want to lift a finger. They want to be kings and want people to work, serve them. That's what they want. They're lazy, okay? They don't want to build anything for the African people. So next time you hear any one of these African leaders complain, you know who they are. Get rid of them and find people who want to work for the African people. Peace.
If you see a big airport today that is new in Africa,